Good morning, folks. I cooked up some eggs and some greens that were gone by a little tough, and the remnants of some of the kale for the birds this morning. And while I had the rocket stove fired up, I thought I would cook my evening meal of a slab of steak. So life is good, folks. Morning, folks. Welcome back. Glad you're here. Now, this morning I got up really early and cooked down some eggs and a steak for myself on the rocket stove. So the other day I went to the local feed store and they did not have grain. They were supposed to get either Tuesday or Thursday. So I just bought a bag of shavings while I was there and through the drive-through, right? So I have sawdust that I have in a 55-gallon barrel that's kept with a cover on so it stays dry. I made sure it was dry when it went in there. And I've been using that, but since I was right through the drive-through and I'm going to have babies come off, I'd like to have some shavings, right? So there's that. I'm not out of grain, but I can make it till Friday. And that's when I have to go back into town, right? So all should be good. So you may wonder what's in my hair. Well, folks, that is a goose feather. Why do I have a goose feather stuck in my hair? Good question, right? So my geese have started to molt, and it looks like 1,000 geese were slaughtered right in the dooryard. There's feathers everywhere. So I pick up the clean ones and I give some to my cousin Shay, and I'm going to keep giving them to her so she can give them to my cousin Anita, which is her sister. So I found one in the yard on my way up to the garden, and I didn't have any place to put it, folks, so I just stuck it in my hair. So, and if I look Indian, well, I kind of am, folks. I have Micmac, and my sister could tell you, but Iroquois, I'm not really sure. We just learned that we have another Indian breed in us, but I know that I am Micmac. And people know that I'm Micmac quite a lot because if I turn side to, I'm not very thick through, but if I'm face on, I'm wide, and that's the Micmac characteristic. You're wide and pretty symmetrical, and right down to wide feet. So, and I do have the high cheekbones, and I have the silver hair that the Micmacs get when they get a little age on them, right? So, anyway, moving beyond that. I was out cooking on the rocket stove, I don't know, last week sometime, and some people that I knew pulled in, and I was outside. I don't know what I was cooking, probably green beans or, no, not green beans, probably Swiss chard or something, who knows, folks, who knows. And they had heard of a rocket stove in passing, but they did not know how to make one out of cinder blocks. They did not know how easy it was. They didn't know what to get to make one. They certainly didn't know how to cook on one. So they were pretty interested in that. They visited while I cooked what I was cooking. I'm pretty sure it was kale. So they asked all kinds of questions, and I told them I would take it apart and show them how it went together, but there was a fire going inside, and the cinder blocks are very hot. So I weren't willing to do that, and they were okay with that. So on the way home, they had to pass through Bangor, and they were going to stop and get some cinder blocks and the makings thereof. and to go home and put it together and learn how to cook on it. Because as he said, one, it's fun. It's two, it's a little primitive, right? Act like they're camping, their kids will love it, they said. And like he said, like she said, propane may not always be available, or you might not always be able to afford it. They cook solely on their stove inside their house and the grill. Both run on propane. So you could get like a charcoal grill, right? Providing you can continue getting the charcoal. You can do that. Or you could make it very simple. Get some cinder blocks. Get the makings to make a rocket stove yourself. There's always wood around. There's always twigs around. Or you can have access to them, right? So it's very simple. As long as you have a match, you're good. So they were pretty excited about that. And we got talking just a little bit, not much, about what was happening in the world. And this was all before Sri Lanka. So they know that times are getting tough. They can see it. They do have a pretty decent garden, folks, and they do hunt. And they want to get some kind of yard bird, barnyard bird, but they weren't sure, so we talked about that for a little bit. So I think they were leaning more towards turkeys and geese, but I don't know. Feed cost was an issue for them. They didn't want to pay all that money for feed, so we spoke about, if you let them free range, then turkeys and geese really love to forage, right? They'll pick your lawn clean of most weeds. So I think it's getting to a point where people they don't have to live like some of us do. They don't have to live without running water or whatnot, right? They don't have to, but they should learn those skills now and practice those skills now. Because if something were to happen today and they hadn't practiced those skills, they didn't have any propane, for whatever reason, right? They would have to rely on cooking on an open fire, right? Now, a lot of you folks that go camping, you know all about how to start a fire, how to cook on a open flame, right? But do you have like the grills, the grates, and everything? Maybe even one of those metal tripod things where you can hang a pot over the flame. Do you have all that stuff? Because it's not going to hurt to get it now and practice it. And like they said, it'll be fun. The kids will love it. And it's not only fun, but it's a whole lot cheaper than burning propane, right? It really is. So I've got a video that I did yesterday on the mullein and the red noodle beans. Real short. And I will post that at the end add it on to the end of this video. Today, I've got to finish stacking wood. There's probably maybe a half a cord left to stack. So I busted my butt yesterday stacking all that wood, and I can tell you, I was brought up to stack nice and neat. I did not stack nice and neat yesterday. I just wanted it stacked, and I wanted it stacked as fast as I could. And it was a nice breezy day. It was mostly cloudy when I was piling that wood into rows. So I just busted butt and threw it up there, and it doesn't look bad from a distance. But if you see my older wood piles throughout the years, yeah, this pile isn't as pretty, but it's still a nice looking wood pile, folks. So I've got to finish stacking that wood. It won't take very long at all. 15 minutes probably at the most. I will be collecting some of my green beans today. I'll be harvesting some more kale. I will be planting some more kale. I will be going through the garden. I need to pull my garlic. I pulled a handful yesterday. grouped them up and hung them in the woodshed. So I've got to finish pulling all that's ready, and I think all of them are ready. And the smaller bulbs will be eaten, and the bigger bulbs will be planted. Well, my rule of thumb here in Maine is to plant Halloween, the week of Halloween. So that usually works pretty well for me. So I'm going to pull my garlic, hang them up, and I'll probably have to trim some tomato, get the suckers off the tomato plants, and trim any low-lying leaves off. I also need to stake up a row of tomatoes that I didn't get to the other day. I've got little tiny cucumbers coming on. I've got a little zucchini setting on. I've got little squash setting on. Everything is looking really good. So that's the plan for today. Part of the day, I'm not really sure what the rest of the day looks like. Now, I have training that I've got to do, but they did not send me the link yet, so if they send me the link throughout the day, and then I will have to definitely do that training, take the time out to do that. So I probably should pick some peas, but a lot of those peas, not the field peas across the road, not those grown in the ditch, but right here in the garden, I will let a lot of those go to seed so I can have seed for next year, right? Because they're heirloom. I'm big on heirloom here, and I'm big on saving seeds, because this year, folks, over 95% of what came up in the garden were heirloom seeds, or seeds that I have saved from heirloom plants from the year before that, sometimes way back, like the onions and the Napa cabbage. Those were pretty old and they all came up nicely. So it's very important to grow your heirloom plants, and that sun is probably right in the way, isn't it? Again. I don't know if that's better or worse. It's worse for me, but that's alright. I'm almost done. So heirloom plants is where it's at. So you can save your seeds, right? Now be careful of cross-pollinating. Do your research. If you plant 2 or 3 different types of tomatoes that are all heirloom, and you plant them and they cross-pollinate, then you're not going to get a true tomato that you want, maybe. Or you might come up like I did one year and come up with a spectacular combination of tomatoes that I haven't been able to do again. So it is, in my opinion, it is best to plant all one type of tomato one year, and then the next plant all one type of that tomato the next year. Same with the squash, same with the beans, same with anything else that you want a true seed from, right? And then rotate. Now I know a lot of people who plant half their garden in string beans. They can them up, and then the next year they won't plant string beans, and they might plant extra potatoes. And no, not potatoes, because they don't last 2 or 3 years unless you can them, right? Or half a garden of tomatoes, and then the next year don't plant tomatoes, or maybe the next year, depends on how many you get and how many you jar up, right? And then rotate that way so nothing has a chance to cross-pollinate. Now this year is a green bean year for me, and it is a tomato year for me. So that's what I'm doing. I made sure I planted plenty of green beans, and I planted plenty of tomatoes. So, and they're heirlooms, so I can save the seeds, right? So I guess that is it. Boy, the sun is really hot on that side of the face, so it's going to be in the 80s today, and by the feel of it, it's going to be very humid. So I've got to get at it and do what I can while it's cooler. It's pretty warm out, but cooler. But folks, you remember that you shouldn't touch your bean plants while they are wet, because they will rust, right? So always make sure that you harvest your beans when they are dried from the dew in the morning or after a rain. Now one year, quite a few years ago, we had so much rain that I had to go out and pick my green beans while they were wet, and I had the worst looking beans, folks. They had rust all over them, they had rust all over the plants, and they still produced, they just didn't look very pretty, right? So it's always best to let your bean plants dry before you even touch them, alright? So I guess this is it for now, unless something comes up. You all have a good day. Thank you for coming back, and life is good, right? Life is good. Stay on top of stuff. Practice those skills. Learn those skills. At least get the items that you need to just get the items that you need in case you, even if you set them in the garage or in the shed or whatever, even if you set them aside and you can't get at learning those skills, get the knowledge down on paper, get the items you're going to need, like the rocket stove, and then when all crap breaks loose and you have to rely on that, you won't be so far behind, right? Alright, thank you. Okay, folks. Mullein update. I measured it, and it is now 8 feet 5 inches tall. Now, if I walk over to it, I had to back way up. Start from the bottom. You can see it started branching out here, like a sorrel cactus almost. And it keeps going and going and going right there. 8 feet 5 inches. Here's an update on my red noodle beans and my squash. Coming along nicely. It would help if we got some rain. So there we go with that. I think they'll make it. They're looking pretty nice there. And if we don't get rain today like it's projected, I will come out and I will water that.